I wasn't supposed to be there. That was the message I received the night before my grandmother's will reading. Tomorrow, 1 p.m., don't tell Olivia. Then a second message came through. Oops, wrong chat. I stared at my phone for a long time after that, not because I didn't understand what it meant, but because I did. They weren't just excluding me from the will, they were trying to erase me from the process entirely. And the worst part? For a second, I almost let them. My name is Olivia Carter. I'm the only one in my family who didn't go into the business. That alone had always been a problem. The Carter family runs a logistics company that started with my grandfather. He built it from nothing and turned it into something worth millions. And somewhere along the way, the family stopped seeing it as a business and started treating it like a birthright. My uncles worked there, my cousins were already being positioned to take over. Even the conversations at dinner weren't about family anymore. They were about future equity, strategic expansion, and ownership structure. I didn't belong in those conversations, and they made sure I knew it. I became a physical therapist. I worked in geriatric rehabilitation, helping people relearn how to walk, how to move, how to live again after their bodies started failing them. To me, that work mattered. To them, it didn't. You're choosing to struggle, my Uncle Daniel told me one Thanksgiving. He said it like he was giving me advice, like I just needed to wake up and fix my life. You could be part of something real, he added. I remember looking at him and thinking, what do you think I do every day? But I didn't say anything. I rarely did. The only person who never questioned my choices was my grandmother, Margaret Carter. She was the last person in the family who still felt human. After my grandfather passed, everything shifted. And I don't just mean emotionally. The house changed. The energy changed. The way people spoke to her changed. They started showing up more often. But not for the reasons you'd think. Suddenly there were meetings, discussions, planning sessions. I remember one afternoon walking into the dining room and seeing paperwork spread across the table. Financial statements, property valuations, legal documents. My grandmother was sitting there quietly, listening, not speaking. Uncle Daniel was leading the conversation. This is just about making things easier for you, he said. We need to simplify your holdings, reduce unnecessary assets. I watched her hands tighten slightly on the edge of the table. That was always her tell. She's still using the vineyard, I said carefully. I was there with her last week. The room went quiet. Daniel looked at me like I had just crossed a line. That's not really your concern, he said. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp, precise, and intentional. That was the first time I realized something had changed, not just in how they saw her, but in how they saw me. After that, things got colder. Family dinners started happening without me. Invitations stopped coming. Group messages went silent whenever I replied. At first, I told myself it was accidental. People were busy. Schedules didn't align. But then came the moment I couldn't ignore. It was my cousin Rachel's engagement party. A big one. Dozens of people. Family, friends, business connections. I found out about it from social media. Not an invitation, not a call. A post. A picture of everyone smiling together under string lights in my aunt's backyard. Captioned, "Family is everything." I stared at that picture longer than I should have, because I could see her, my grandmother, sitting at the far end of the table, alone. I called her that night. "Did you enjoy the party?" I asked. There was a pause. "It was nice," she said slowly. "But I wish you had been there." I swallowed. They didn't invite me. Silence. Real silence this time. "Oh," she said finally. Just that. But I heard it. the disappointment, the realization. "They told me you were busy," she added. Of course they did. That was the moment something shifted inside me. Not anger, not yet, but awareness. Because it wasn't just about me anymore. They were controlling the narrative around her, too. After that, I started visiting her more, twice a week, sometimes more, not out of obligation, but because I didn't trust what was happening when I wasn't there. We would sit in her sunroom, drink tea, and talk about everything except money. She told me stories about her childhood, about mistakes she made, about regrets she carried. Real things, messy things, human things. And sometimes she would say things that didn't quite make sense at the time. "People become very honest when they think no one is watching," she told me once. I smiled. I thought she was being philosophical. Looking back, she wasn't. She was being precise. Because not long after that, I noticed something else. She started asking questions, not about me, about them. "Has Daniel said anything about the vineyard lately? Do you still talk to Rachel often? Have you noticed how often Clara visits now?" It felt unusual, like she was collecting information or verifying something. One afternoon, I walked into her study without knocking, something I had done 1,000 times before. But this time, she quickly closed a notebook. It was small, leather-bound. "I didn't mean to interrupt," I said. "You didn't," she replied. But her tone was different, careful. I didn't ask about the notebook. I wish I had, because everything that came after might have made more sense sooner. The real turning point came a few months later. Uncle Daniel called for a family meeting. That was never a good sign. When I arrived, the living room was already full. Everyone was there, and not just family. There was a man I didn't recognize, in a suit, holding a folder. A real estate agent. "We've been discussing selling the vineyard," Daniel said as soon as I walked in. Just like that, no build-up, no warning. I looked at my grandmother. She didn't speak, but her expression said everything. Tight, controlled. "No," I said. Too quickly, too directly. The room went still. "She was just there last week," I continued. "She wants to go back this summer." Daniel exhaled slowly. "Olivia," he said, like he was explaining something to a child. "This isn't about preference. It's about practicality." "She didn't say she wanted to sell it," I replied. That's when it happened. That shift. The moment everything became clear. "You're not part of these decisions," he said. Not loud, not angry, but absolute, final. And for the first time, not even pretending otherwise. The real estate agent awkwardly gathered his things. No one stopped him. After he left, Daniel turned back to me. "You've been spending a lot of time here," he said. I didn't like the way he said it. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," he replied slowly, "that you're getting too involved." There it was, the accusation, unspoken but clear, manipulation, influence, intent. "I come here because she's alone," I said. "That's not how it looks," Rachel added quietly from the couch. I turned to her. "Then how does it look?" No one answered. They didn't need to. I already knew. That night, I stayed behind after everyone left. My grandmother was sitting in the kitchen, quiet. "I didn't ask them to do that," she said. "I know. They think they're helping." I didn't respond, because we both knew that wasn't true. She reached across the table and took my hand. "People show you who they are when they think you don't matter," she said softly. I looked at her. "I've been watching, Olivia." There was something in her voice, something certain, something final, and for the first time I felt like I was missing something important. A week later, she was gone, and the next night, I got the message. "Don't tell Olivia." I sat in my apartment staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to stay out of it, to avoid the confrontation, because I already knew what was waiting for me there. Rejection, hostility, humiliation. But another part of me, a stronger part, remembered what she said. I've been watching. So had I. And something about all of this didn't feel right. I didn't know what I was walking into, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let them decide whether I belonged. Not this time. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the message in my head. Don't tell Olivia. Not we forgot to invite her. Not maybe she shouldn't come. No, they made a decision, a deliberate one, to exclude me, to control what I would and wouldn't know. And suddenly, everything from the past few months started lining up in a way that made my stomach turn. The missed invitations, the silence in group chats, the way conversations stopped when I entered a room. It wasn't accidental, it was coordinated. And I had been the only one pretending it wasn't. By morning, I had already decided I was going. Not because I expected anything from the will, but because I needed to hear it. From her. Even if she had left me nothing, even if they were right, I still deserved to know. The law office was downtown, in one of those older buildings that looked more intimidating than impressive. I sat in my car for a few minutes before going in. My hands were shaking. Not from fear exactly, more like anticipation. Like I already knew this was going to change something. I just didn't know what. When the elevator doors opened, I saw them immediately. All of them. Clustered together in the waiting area, talking quietly, like they were part of something I wasn't. My Aunt Clara noticed me first. Her expression didn't change much, but there was a flicker, surprise. Then irritation. "Olivia," she said a little too loudly. "What are you doing here?" Every head turned. "I'm here for the will reading," I said. There was a pause, a heavy one. My Uncle Daniel stepped forward and positioned himself between me and the rest of them, not aggressively, but intentionally. "You weren't supposed to come," he said, not even pretending. "I didn't realize it was invitation only," I replied. "It is," Rachel said from behind him. I looked at her. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "This is for family," Daniel added. Something in me tightened. Not anger, not yet, but something sharper. "I am family," I said. Silence again. Then a voice cut through it, calm, professional. "Are we here for the Margaret Carter estate?" We all turned. The lawyer had stepped out into the hallway. Older man, sharp eyes, the kind of presence that didn't need to raise its voice to control a room. "Yes," Daniel said quickly. "And there's been a bit of a misunderstanding. He gestured toward me, wasn't supposed to be included today." The lawyer frowned. "Included?" He looked down at his papers, then back at me. "Your name?" "Olivia Carter." He nodded slowly. "Then you are exactly where you need to be." The room went still. Daniel didn't move. "There must be some confusion," he said. The lawyer shook his head. "I don't believe there is." Then he stepped aside and gestured toward the conference room. "Please, everyone come in." The room felt too quiet once we sat down, like something fragile had already cracked and no one wanted to acknowledge it. I took a seat near the end of the table, not too close, not too far. No one looked at me, but I could feel it, the tension, the resentment. the disbelief. The lawyer opened a folder and adjusted his glasses. "Before we begin," he said, "I want to clarify something." He looked directly at my uncle. "No assets should have been distributed prior to this reading." Daniel stiffened. "We haven't." The lawyer raised a hand slightly. Not aggressive, just enough to stop him. "We'll address that shortly." It was a small sentence, but it landed hard. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about a will anymore. I felt something cold settle in my chest. The lawyer continued. "I will now read Margaret Carter's final will and testament." The legal language started, formal, measured, distant. I tried to focus, but my mind kept drifting, to her voice, to the last thing she said to me. "I've been watching." Then, after careful consideration, my attention snapped back. "I leave the entirety of my estate." The room leaned forward. "To my granddaughter, Olivia Carter." Everything stopped. Not quiet, not silence. Stopped. Like the air had been pulled out of the room. "That's not possible." Daniel's voice, sharp, disbelieving. "There's been a mistake." "There has not," the lawyer replied calmly. Rachel let out a small, broken laugh. "This is insane." Clara shook her head. "She wasn't even—" She stopped herself. Wasn't even what? Family? I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't even breathe properly. Because I didn't understand it yet. Not fully. The lawyer continued. "There is an accompanying letter, which will be provided to Ms. Carter." He reached into the folder and handed me an envelope. My name written in her handwriting. My hands were shaking when I opened it. "My dearest Olivia." I stopped, swallowed, started again. I imagine this has come as a surprise to many in the room. It should not. I have spent years observing how each of you behaves, not when things are easy, but when you believe there is nothing to gain. I could feel eyes on me now. Daniel, who only visits when there are decisions to be made. Clara, who brings gifts but leaves before conversation begins. And the rest who have mistaken proximity for care. No one spoke. But you, Olivia, you came when I had nothing to offer you. No influence, no advantage, just time. And you gave yours freely. My vision blurred. That is why everything I have now belongs to you. I lowered the letter slowly. No one could meet my eyes. But the lawyer wasn't done. "There is an additional matter." He opened another document. Margaret Carter kept detailed records of her property, including items removed from her residence in the last 18 months. The shift in the room was immediate, subtle, but undeniable. Cold. "Any items not returned within 14 days will be subject to legal action." No one moved. No one spoke. But I saw it. The panic, the realization. They hadn't just assumed they would inherit. They had already started taking things. And she knew. She had known the entire time. That was the moment everything changed, not just for them, for me, because suddenly this wasn't just a family conflict. It was something else, something structured, something documented, something real, and something they weren't prepared for. The meeting ended quickly after that, too quickly. No one wanted to stay in that room any longer than they had to. But the silence followed us out, into the hallway, into the elevator, out onto the street. Daniel caught up to me before I reached my car. "Olivia." I turned. His tone had changed, less sharp, more controlled. "We need to talk about this." I let out a small breath. "There's nothing to talk about. You heard what she said." "That's not how this works," he replied. "You think this just stands like this?" I held his gaze. She made her decision. She was confused, Clara added, stepping in. You know that. No, I said quietly. I don't. Rachel crossed her arms. This isn't going to hold up, she said. There are legal processes for this. You don't just walk in and take everything. There it was again. Not grief, not loss. Strategy, control, planning. You should be careful, Daniel said. This could get messy. I nodded slightly. I think it already is. I got into my car before they could say anything else, but their voices stayed with me. This won't hold up. You don't just take everything. She was confused. By the time I got home, my phone was already buzzing. Unknown numbers, voicemails stacking up, messages I didn't open. You need to call us back. We need to handle this properly. You know this isn't right. One message stood out. This will not hold up in court. I stared at it longer than the others, because it confirmed something I hadn't fully admitted yet. They weren't just reacting. They were preparing. Later that evening, things escalated. A notification popped up on my phone. Rachel had posted something. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. Funny how some people pretend to care about family until there's money involved. No names, no direct accusations, but everyone who knew us would know. My chest tightened. I refreshed the page. Comments were already coming in. People asking questions, speculating, some even tagging me. I closed the app immediately, but it didn't matter. The damage was already starting. An hour later, my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't family. It was my supervisor. Olivia, she said carefully, I just received a call. My stomach dropped. A call? From someone claiming to be your aunt. She had concerns about your conduct. I closed my eyes. What kind of concerns? She implied that you may have taken advantage of a patient, that your judgment could be compromised. For a moment, I couldn't speak, because that wasn't just family drama anymore. That was my career, my life. I'm so sorry, I said finally. That's not true. I didn't think it was, she replied, but you need to understand how serious that is. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I know. After I hung up, I just sat there, still, silent, because everything was happening faster than I could process. The will, the accusations, the social media, my job. And underneath all of it, one realization kept getting louder. This wasn't about grief. This wasn't about losing her. This was about control. And they weren't going to give it up easily. For a moment, just a moment, I thought about ending it. Not my life, but the fight. Walking away. Letting them take it. Because fighting them meant something bigger, messier, longer. And I didn't know if I was strong enough for that. I looked down at the letter in my hands. Her handwriting. Steady. Certain. You gave your time freely. My throat tightened, because that was the truth. Not what they were saying. Not what they were trying to turn me into. The truth. And if I walked away now, if I let them rewrite everything, then none of it would matter. Not what I did, not what she saw, not what she chose. I wiped my eyes slowly, took a breath, and for the first time since the reading, I made a real decision. I wasn't going to fight them emotionally. I wasn't going to argue, or explain, or defend myself. I was going to do something else. Something they wouldn't expect. Something they weren't prepared for. I reached for my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and stopped on one name. The lawyer. If this was going to become a legal fight, then I wasn't going to walk into it alone, because they had already decided what they thought I was. Now it was time to show them who I actually was. And I had a feeling they weren't ready for that. I called him the next morning. I didn't hesitate this time. If there was one thing the last 24 hours had made clear, it was this. They weren't going to stop. And if I waited, if I tried to handle it calmly, they would get ahead of me. They already were. "Mr. Harrison," I said when he picked up. "This is Olivia Carter." "I was expecting your call," he replied. That alone told me everything. He already knew what was coming. "I think I need help," I said. A brief pause. "I think you're right." By the time I arrived at his office, he already had documents spread across the table. Not just the will. More. Much more. "Your grandmother was very thorough," he said, motioning for me to sit. I lowered myself into the chair slowly. "I'm starting to see that." He studied me for a moment. "They're going to challenge this," he said. I nodded. "They already are." "Good," he replied. I frowned slightly. "Good?" "Yes, it means they're predictable." I wasn't sure I found that comforting. "They're going to rely on pressure," he continued. "Emotional arguments, social influence, possibly intimidation." That sounds about right. "But this," he tapped the folder in front of him, "isn't about emotion." He opened it. "And this is why they're going to lose." I leaned forward. And that's when I saw it. Pages of records, detailed, organized, precise. An inventory. Every item in my grandmother's home. Logged, cataloged, photographed. My chest tightened. She kept track of all of this? "Every valuable item," he said, "and more importantly, every item that went missing." He slid another document toward me. A visitor log. Names, dates, durations. I saw my name again and again, twice a week, sometimes more. Then I saw theirs, far less frequent, short visits, occasional appearances. Rachel, mostly holidays, Daniel, sporadic, Clara, brief. "She also documented behavioral patterns," he added. I looked up. Behavioral patterns? When people visited, what they asked about, how long they stayed, what they focused on. A strange feeling settled in my chest. She was tracking them. "She was observing them," he corrected gently. There was a difference, and suddenly I understood what she meant. "I've been watching." I leaned back slightly, trying to process everything. "This isn't just a will," I said. "No," he agreed. "It's a prepared position." He reached for another file, financial records, transfers, withdrawals, amounts that made my stomach turn. "These were taken from her accounts over the last 2 years, he said. I scanned the page. "These don't look small." "They aren't." "Were they approved?" He didn't answer directly. "Were they documented?" That told me everything. My chest tightened again. They were already taking from her. Yes. Not dramatic, not exaggerated, just a fact. And somehow that made it worse, because it confirmed what I didn't want to believe. This hadn't started recently. This had been happening for a while. "What do we do?" I asked. "We respond," he said. "That's it?" "That's where we start." I hesitated. "They've already contacted my workplace." His expression sharpened slightly. "I expected that." "You did?" "Yes, when control is challenged, escalation follows. That didn't make me feel better. What kind of escalation? I asked. The kind that forces you to either defend yourself or retreat. I looked down at the documents again. I'm not retreating. Good, he said. Because if you do, they win before this even begins. He pulled out another paper. We'll issue formal notices, demand return of property, document interference, and most importantly, set boundaries. That word stayed with me. Boundaries. Because that was something I had never really done with them before. Not clearly, not firmly. Okay, I said. And for the first time, I meant it. The next few days moved quickly. Not chaotic, focused, structured, deliberate. Mr. Harrison introduced me to another attorney, Sarah Donovan. She didn't waste time on small talk, didn't soften her tone, didn't try to make me feel comfortable. She just reviewed everything, then looked up. This is strong, she said. Strong? I repeated. Your grandmother didn't leave anything to chance. I swallowed. She built a system, Sarah continued. We just enforce it. That word again, enforce. And suddenly, this didn't feel like a family disagreement anymore. It felt like a case. We sent out formal letters that afternoon, requests for return of property. Not suggestions, not conversations. Requirements. Deadlines included. I didn't tell my family. They found out on their own. Daniel called first. What are you doing? He demanded. Handling it properly. You're sending legal threats to your own family? I'm asking for things to be returned. You're blowing this out of proportion. I paused. No, I said quietly. I think it's already there. There was silence on the line. Then, this isn't over. I know. I hung up before he could say anything else. Clara didn't call. She sent messages, long ones, emotional. We can fix this. You're making a mistake. You're tearing the family apart. I didn't respond, because for the first time, I understood something clearly. I wasn't the one who broke it. Rachel escalated next. Another post, more direct this time. Some people will destroy everything for money. No names, but it didn't matter. People knew, or thought they did. Comments started coming in. Speculation, assumptions, some supportive, some not. I didn't reply, but I read enough to feel it. The shift. Because truth doesn't spread as fast as narrative, and they were building one. Then came the meeting. Sarah scheduled it. Formal, neutral office, everyone invited. Attendance strongly recommended. I almost didn't go. Not because I was afraid of them, but because I knew what it meant. There would be no going back after this, no pretending things were normal. But then I realized they hadn't been normal for a long time. So I went. They were already there. Daniel, Clara, Rachel, Nathan. And for the first time, they didn't look confident. They looked uncertain. Good. Sarah didn't waste time. Let's begin, she said. Daniel's lawyer tried to speak. She stopped him with a glance. First question, she said calmly. She looked directly at Daniel. Did you remove any items from Margaret Carter's residence before the will was read? He hesitated, just slightly, but enough. No, he said. That was the first crack. Sarah nodded. Are you certain? Yes. She pressed a button. The screen behind her lit up. Security footage. Time-stamped. Clear. Daniel, carrying a box out of the house. The room went still. That's out of context, his lawyer said quickly. Of course, Sarah replied. Another clip. Clara, opening a drawer, removing jewelry. Another. Rachel, upstairs hallway, looking around before slipping something into her bag. The air shifted, noticeably, uncomfortably. "No one said we couldn't take things," Clara snapped. "There was no restriction." Sarah tilted her head slightly. "There was." She slid a document across the table. Signed, dated, an asset protection clause. No removal without authorization. Silence. That was the second breakdown, because now it wasn't just about what they did, it was about what they ignored. Daniel leaned forward. "You're twisting this." Sarah didn't react. Instead, she opened another file. Financial records, transfers, large amounts. "To your accounts," she said calmly. Daniel froze. Clara's expression shifted. Rachel looked down. "Those were loans," Daniel said quickly. "Documented?" Sarah asked. He didn't answer, because they weren't. And that was the collapse. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. Because everything they had built their position on, assumptions, control, entitlement, had nothing underneath it. The room stayed quiet, heavy, unavoidable. Then Daniel's lawyer cleared his throat. "We'll need time to review this." Of course they would, because everything had just changed, and they hadn't seen it coming. As we stood to leave, no one looked at me directly, but I could feel it, the shift. Not just legal, personal. For the first time, I wasn't the one being pushed out, and they weren't the ones in control. And the strangest part? I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady, like something had finally settled into place. Because this was never about winning. It was about truth. And now, there was no way for them to avoid it anymore. The next 2 days were quiet, too quiet. No calls, no messages, no new accusations. After everything that had happened, the silence felt unnatural, like the calm after something had already broken. I stayed busy, not to avoid thinking, but because there was a lot to do. Sarah and Mr. Harrison handled the legal side, but I still had to go through the house. For the first time, as mine. That part still didn't feel real. I used the same key I'd always had, the same one I'd used for years when I came to visit her. But this time, when the door opened, it felt different. Heavier. Quieter. Final. The house smelled the same, lavender and something faintly sweet she used to keep near the windows. But something was missing. Not just her, other things. I didn't notice it at first, not until I walked into the living room. The wall where one of her paintings had always hung was empty. Just a faint outline where it used to be. I moved further inside. The bookshelf, missing a few pieces. The hallway table, bare. Her bedroom? That's when it hit me. Drawers partially empty, jewelry box almost cleared out. Even things that had no real value. A small ceramic figurine she'd had since I was a kid. Gone. I sat down on the edge of her bed and just stared. It wasn't about the money. It never had been. It was the feeling. Like pieces of her had been taken before she was even gone. Like they had already started erasing her. I stayed there longer than I meant to, until I finally stood up and walked back into the hallway. That's when I noticed the safe. Small, built into the wall behind a painting that had been left slightly crooked. I hesitated, then tried the combination that felt obvious. Her birthday. It clicked. Inside, there were a few things. A leather-bound journal, several small memory cards, and a note, folded carefully, with my name on it. I sat down at the desk before opening it. My hands were steadier this time. I don't know why. Maybe because a part of me already knew what I was going to find. Olivia, if you're reading this, then things have likely unfolded exactly the way I expected. I didn't want to believe it would come to this, but I prepared for it anyway. Everything you need is here, not just to protect what I've left you, but to understand why. I swallowed and kept reading. I know this will be difficult, not because of the money, but because of what it reveals about the people you thought you knew. They will try to rewrite this, to make you doubt yourself, to make you feel guilty. Do not let them. You have seen the truth. You have always seen it. You just didn't want to believe it. I love you, and I trust you. That is why I chose you. I lowered the letter slowly, and for the first time since all of this started, I didn't feel overwhelmed. I felt clear. I opened the journal next. Page after page of entries, dates, notes, observations, not emotional, not dramatic, precise. Daniel visited, spoke only about restructuring assets. Clara brought gifts, left after 40 minutes, did not ask about health. Rachel upstairs for 20 minutes, bracelet missing afterward. I stopped reading, closed my eyes, because it wasn't speculation. It wasn't memory. It was recorded, documented, proven. I understood now. She hadn't just made a decision. She had built a record, a timeline, a truth that couldn't be argued away. I took everything with me that day, the journal, the memory cards, the note, and drove straight to Sarah's office. She didn't say much while reviewing it, didn't need to. By the time she finished, she leaned back in her chair slightly. "This settles it," she said. "It already felt settled," I replied. "This makes it undeniable." The next week moved quickly, faster than I expected. The lawsuit they had been threatening never came. Instead, their lawyer called, requested time, requested discussion, requested resolution. It didn't take long. Within days, they withdrew any formal challenge, agreed to return everything. No public statements, no admission, but no fight. The items came back slowly, delivered, not handed over. Boxes left at the front door, packages signed for without conversation. Jewelry returned in sealed envelopes, paintings wrapped carefully. The house started to feel whole again. Not the same, but closer. I didn't expect apologies. I didn't get any. The silence continued. But this time, it felt different. Not tense, not threatening, just distant. A few weeks later, I received a call. "Clara." I almost didn't answer, but I did. "Olivia," she said. Her voice was softer than I remembered. "I wanted to talk." I waited. "We didn't realize," she continued, "how much time you were spending with her." I let out a small breath. "You didn't ask." There was a pause. "No," she admitted. "We didn't." Another pause. "We thought you were taking advantage." I looked around the room, at the things that had been returned, at the pieces of her life they had almost taken apart. "I know," I said. "I'd like to explain," she added. "Maybe apologize." I didn't answer right away because I didn't know what I felt. Not anger, not anymore, but not forgiveness either. "I'm not ready for that yet," I said finally. "That's fair," she replied. And for once, It actually sounded like she meant it. After we hung up, I sat there for a while, just thinking about everything, about how fast things had escalated, about how clear everything looked now, and how unclear it had been before. The legal case closed shortly after. Everything finalized, everything documented, everything settled. But that wasn't the part that stayed with me. It was what came after. The quiet, the space, the absence of constant pressure. I went back to work, slowly, carefully. My supervisor never brought up the calls again. The rumors faded. People moved on. They always do. And for the first time in a long time, I had space to think about what came next. Not what I was defending, but what I wanted to build. I didn't make big changes. Not at first. I kept the house the way she had it. The same furniture, the same layout, the same feeling. I just added small things. Books I liked, a chair near the window where I could sit in the mornings, a routine that felt like mine. And then, eventually, I started doing something else, something I had thought about for a long time. I set up a small program, through the clinic, focused on elderly patients who didn't have consistent support, people who needed more than just treatment, people who needed someone to show up, the way I had for her. It wasn't a big foundation, not yet, but it was something, and it felt right. Months passed. Things settled into a rhythm. The calls from family became rare, occasional, careful. Rachel reached out once, short message. No accusations this time, just neutral. I replied the same way. We weren't close, but we weren't at war anymore either. Daniel never contacted me again. I didn't expect him to. Some things don't resolve neatly. Some people don't change. And that was something I had learned to accept. One evening, I was sitting in the garden behind the house, the same place she used to sit, watching the light shift as the sun went down. Everything felt still. Not empty, not heavy, just calm. I thought about everything she had done, everything she had seen, everything she had prepared. And I finally understood. This was never about punishing them. It wasn't about choosing sides. It wasn't even about the money. It was about clarity, about seeing people as they really are and deciding what to do with that truth. I leaned back slightly in the chair, let the silence settle around me. And for the first time since all of this started, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. Not to them, not to anyone. I had already done what mattered. I protected what she trusted me with. And maybe more importantly, I finally set a boundary I had avoided my entire life. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of respect. For her, and for myself. Some of them have started reaching out again, carefully, slowly, like they're testing whether the door is still open. I haven't decided what I'll do about that yet. Maybe one day I'll be ready. Maybe not. But this time, it won't be because they expect it. It will be because I choose it. And that makes all the difference.